Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Apartment Department. My name is Ann Baum, and with me, as always, is my co host, Chris Johnson. We have a wonderful guest today. We have the co founder and chief strategy officer of Apartment SEO and the founder of the Multifamily Builders Club, and that is the one and only Martin Canchola. Martin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm definitely really happy to be here and look forward to our conversation.
Oh yeah, we are gonna have so much fun. I feel like we're gonna have to pull you and Chris like off the mic because SEO is both of your all's language. So before we dive into our topic today, will you tell us a little bit about Apartment SEO and also the Multifamily Builders Club?
Sure. Yeah, I can give you a brief introduction. So, my name is Martin Canchola. I am the chief strategy officer at Apartment SEO. Ron Ruiz and I founded the company back in 2013. So I was from the world of local search and SEO. I worked at a SEO agency, eLocal, and that's where we did a bunch of pay-per-call, lead generation for like AT&T, Yellow Pages back in the day when you can kind of upload a bunch of local listings, and it was a lot easier back then. And Google and SEO was way different than it is today. But just kind of going through and growing there with that company for like over almost a decade. It was like 8 years. And of course, Ron Maurice was on the multifamily side, so he got to see the evolution from For Rent magazine and selling magazines to the internet age. And he was at like Lead Tracking Solutions before it became Yardi. And actually we're family. So Ron's my uncle, through marriage and stuff. So we'd always be at family events and parties and hanging out, and he was always doing big things. And I'd always tell him at the parties, hey, you should do what I do, SEO, for your industry, right? And it took a little bit of time for the stars to align, but finally, he wasn't super happy at the startup he was at. And then he was like, hey, tell me again what you do. And we started, talking more about it and all that good stuff. And one day he called me kind of out of the blue, and he was talking to one of our first clients, advanced management company, Karen Polanski. We call her the godmother of Apartment SEO. And she, was like, Ron, I love what you're doing, but I'm not crazy about the product that you're selling. And he was like, well, what are you kind of trying to do this year in 2013? She's like, well, I need to claim all of my Google listings. And then I think that was the light bulb moment. And he pretty much walked out with the whole portfolio to kind of 36 apartments. And that was when he was like, okay, I got us our first client. I told her we're going to do it for free for the next 90 days so I could prove that I could do what I could do. And from that point on, we were kind of off to the races. And now we do, of course, we're a premier Google partner, social media, reputation management, websites. We're a service provider, but now we're actually building our own tech stack and things that we feel are needed for the industry. And, going from a humble couple guys startup to, we're almost 100 strong,
Wow.
and the whole company, like, nationwide, and how many, thousands of apartments that we serve today, and many, many management companies. It's been kind of like a dream come true, because I still can't believe how much of a little enterprise that has become of just, a little idea that we had to, bring SEO to the multifamily world. And I think now in 2026, we kind of want to do the same thing with AI search and kind of lead the path there. And just really grateful to be in an industry that, with so much love, and everyone's so nice, and it's just been so much fun, kind of growing together for the last, and we actually just celebrated our 13-year anniversary. So,
Congratulations, Chris. We always hear the best founder story. Like honestly, I
I
love the
know.
founder stories that we hear because they're all similar. Like people were doing something, they weren't completely happy. They wanted to go out on their own. They knew they could do something better. They found an opportunity. And I love the evolution stories that the founding and then the evolution stories that we hear. So I love that Apartment SEO is obviously doing great things. And then tell us a little bit about this new venture that you're doing, the Multifamily Builders Club.
yeah. So the multifamily building builders club was really inspired from a LinkedIn post. Somebody was talking about how they were able to vibe code a website for an apartment, connect all the integrations and automations needed, and it was kind of like an eye opening moment. And I've seen more and more posts like that. In fact, I saw another one just yesterday. It was Brian with Visibly. and somebody was talking to him. A smaller property management company was like, "Okay, I'm trying to build my own little stack with these platforms now." And even though we're probably a little ways before something like that can really happen or take place, we're not too far from it. So I think what it comes down to, like, I'm really big on AI fluency and just kind of trying to help, the masses. If you think about it, a large part of the population world really aren't embracing AI. I mean, maybe to some degree where it's like, okay, they're using ChatGPT, but I think there's different levels. Like level one is just like understanding, like, hey, we can have a conversation, we can find new information, get research, down to like, okay, hey, I can build like a full on autonomous agent that can work 24/7, around the clock and do things for me, right? There's like that level from like one to like, max speed. And so what I found is that a lot of multifamily marketers, they're afraid to sometimes say, okay, I don't know what's going on. I need some help. I need to learn more about AI. I don't want to be replaced by AI, but I think it's important that you understand how to use these tools, because together, when you have like the augmentation, I feel like I have superpowers now in a world where before I couldn't code anything in Python or HTML or build like an app from the ground up. But now with the rise of, Claude Code and Base 44 and Lovable, you know, if you have an idea and you understand some of the basic components of, what makes an app or a product or user experience, or you have that domain knowledge and you can kind of relate that to the AI and explain your concept, your idea, I think people would be really surprised what they can build today. And Claude is my co-pilot. Of course, I use ChatGPT, but Claude is probably my main go-to co-pilot. And anytime, I don't care what I want to do, if I want to solve a problem or do something, I just tell it, hey, just take me through it one step at a time. And then, we just run through the mode, I'm just amazed at some of the stuff we've been able to build together to do research. I mean, putting together a Python scraper, we just had a case where, my friend Robert needed help, scraping 25,000 products from like a website for some other project. And I was able to build a Python scraper, and it did everything beautifully in a Google Colab notebook. And I did it all in 10 minutes. And I just feel like a little Mr. Robot hacker, like being able to build stuff that I never been able to build before and help
Mhm.
solve problems for people that that they just have. There's like, hey, I need a tool for this. Well, how about we build it really quick in 10 minutes? I mean, that's where this is kind of going. So the Multifamily Builders Club is really to help inspire, help educate, and really bring people to the forefront, like to understand better AI, understand the some of the regulations. Like they just released some regulations for AI for the US standard across 50 states, getting more familiar with, Google Colab Notebook, some of these vibe coding platforms. And I'm not just going to be the only one, talking about things. I want to have members also bring little micro workshops and things that we're going to be showcasing. So the next one, we're highlighting Claude Cowork. And then also people are showcasing their own builds on things that they're building to help them save time themselves. So we're really merging it all together to come together as a community to really share and grow, as one.
That's unbelievable. I mean, I think, and it's needed because I think you're right. People need the resources. They might not be able to, you and I sat at a round table you did at MSMS, and we built an app. Like someone had an idea for an app
Mhm.
and you were able to build it in 20 minutes while we were sitting at the table, and it was mind blowing. So, how often do you guys meet?
So
With
the meeting is actually once a month on the first Friday of every month at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And so we're going to be doing the second one as of this Friday. And we do record them as well. So members can have access to the recordings too. And as of right now, it's still kind of like a kind of figure it out as we go. I was able to put up a domain that we've owned for a long time, but I never had a reason to use it until then. It was actually multifamily.club. And so we put it up on there, and it was just a perfect little domain to just send people to. So if anyone's interested in joining the fun, they just gotta submit their email and name, and then I'll make sure they're added to the invite list. It's free. It's open to everybody. PMCs, vendors, prop tech founders, open to all.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for
That's really
doing that.
awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. And I love talking about SEO, and that's kind of what you're what you're doing now, especially with the AI tech. Can I ask you a question? How do you know where to start? I mean, I kind of feel like AI right now is the wild, wild west. I've talked about that on a couple of pods. I've used that term. I kind of feel like it's when Google early in my career was we were kind of trying to figure out Google, but we kind of knew Google was going to win. It just feels like we don't know which AI is going to win. And how do you know what's a target? How do you know what you're doing is working? Can you give us any insights, or our listeners any insights on what you're doing there and how you're tracking it?
You know what's so funny, Chris and Ann, that even though we're in this new age and this evolution of AI search, there are so many Web 1.0 strategies that are coming back full force. Like when we talk about SEO is your foundation, like that is still very key. It's very important to understand how you're ranking in Google, the 10 blue links, and then also Bing, right? For example, it's going to be very important to understand where you're ranking there, right? And still, when we're thinking about double EAT, expertise, experience, authority, and trust, all those signals are still extremely important. And then from there, it's like the user experience on the website itself. How are users actually engaging with it? And what kind of helpful content are we creating for the users? Like, obviously, people know about FAQs, but just FAQs about the property isn't going to do it. What kind of FAQs are we creating that are answering questions about the neighborhood? Really specific amenities. Like, we have a client that has a very unique amenity, a ski simulator, right? Being able to highlight those with multimodal, not just blogging, videos and images and infographics, and how many other people are talking about you, right? Reputation is such a thing that's been around forever, but the sentiment matters more than ever. And each AI search engine is going to be a little bit different. Even though Google, Gemini, AI mode take up the market share of where you're getting the majority of your traffic today, it's probably hovering around 90, maybe 85%. But search is going to be a little bit more democratized over time as platforms like ChatGPT start sending more referral traffic. And it's interesting because ChatGPT, is going to be different than, say, Perplexity. So Perplexity ties back to Google rankings. If you rank really good in Google, you got a high probability you're going to do really good in Perplexity. Whereas with ChatGPT, they're going to be pulling from sources like Yelp and Bing. And so as much as we don't like Yelp in the apartment marketing industry, Yelp is going to be coming back full force because Yelp is such an important signal, and your reputation, if it's poor on there, you're going to have a less chance of being recommended on ChatGPT. So each AI search engine is going to do something unique and probably use different methods to train. Like Grok is another great example. Grok obviously is owned by Elon Musk, and then he also owns Twitter/X. That's where they're getting all their training data, right? So X and Grok, there's a relationship there. Same way there's a relationship between Reddit and OpenAI and Bing as well. So what is it? Yeah, OpenAI and what's the other one? Gemini, Google, right? So they're using Reddit to train the data. And that's why you hear people talk about Reddit. You hear people talk about LinkedIn. And then, of course, the ILSs, they become major sources of trust as well. But now we're also seeing the property management company websites also becoming a source of truth if they build out their websites properly, with location pages, profiles. They also have a chance to be seen. Because if you think about it, it's not just the humans we're creating content for, but now with the rise of deep research, they're sending out agents where people are setting up triggers or GBTs to, find them the cheapest flights, the hotels. I mean, what's to say people aren't going to use that to find apartments when, they could set up, okay, I want to find an apartment in this area around this price range, has to have a washer and dryer in it. Every week or every day, I want you to send me any new listings that you can scour the web and find and bring back to me. And then from there, I'm going to make that decision to, schedule a tour or link. So how is your website? How is it indexed by Google? How does each AI search engine, what kind of sentiment are you kind of appealing to? And really all those signals together, like your social media, your reputation, all that is coming together now. And each platform is going to be a different signal for a different AI search engine. So depending on the sentiment there, that's going to show whether you're going to be part of the conversation or not.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that was a lot of information to unpack. I don't even know where to start with that, except Martin, is one of these going to win out, or are we just going to have to market basically to the top 2 or 3? Do you think?
I think Google ultimately is probably the main one you want to focus on, like your Google business profile. ChatGPT, we are slowly but surely kind of seeing it, become a top 10 source of traffic. I'm sure you're seeing some of your properties get referral traffic from UTM, from ChatGPT. We're also finding some interesting things taking place with the agentic browsers, or like if you're using Claude, in some cases, Claude could just take over your browser it can go search for something and do it. So even though it looks like a Google direct traffic in some cases, like you thought attribution was crazy before. Attribution is going to get a whole lot more messier now, because what looks like a Google organic result or a piece of traffic from them could have been ChatGPT just going to Google and taking the action on your behalf. So it can be a little tricky with the whole attribution piece. I do think, and ChatGPT was the one growing super fast. And then of course you saw what happened when they said, okay, yeah, we'll help the government and they could use AI for, war or whatever. And then you had a bunch of people kind of opt out of ChatGPT. So, I mean, you could have one being the leader and maybe leading the charge, but all it takes is one thing, one bad move for them to, turn users off and then people shy away. So ultimately, as much as Google, I think Google has the largest reach, the biggest network, and they have been innovating, right? The Nano Banana, they're pushing out, their own coding platform as well. They're starting to make their own chips. I mean, they probably have the biggest lead to kind of maintain, but also Bing and Microsoft, Bing just released, they're doing their Bing Clarity for like search experience optimization, and all that could be built into the back end of your website. So, I mean, if you have WordPress or some other platform, you can actually add it. So Bing and Microsoft are doing some big strides to be competitive for AI monitoring, kind of keeping an eye on your user experience. So they're making some good headway too. But I think ultimately, if you had to really pick a couple, I think obviously Google and ChatGPT, and that's why Google Business Profile and Yelp are going to probably be more the ones we really got to focus on it. And we all know how much Yelp can be a problematic. If you don't have a Yelp rep, that could be an issue. So your directories and citations, that's like an SEO foundational type of, strategy, that is still so important today. So understanding your listings, what duplicates do you have? We were doing some research and we found, one of the apartments had 2 Yelp listings, and the Yelp listing that was getting picked up for AI search and sentiment was the one with the 2 negative reviews. So we were able to work with the Yelp rep to actually get that one negative one removed and left the one with the positive sentiment. And then from there, I was able to kind of pick that up. So being able to look really deeply at each of your directories and the sentiment, and if you have duplicate listings or no listings, it's going to be really important to go back. Same thing with like Reddit, blogging, podcasting. All that is just old school RSS technology, real simple syndication. And again, that's the type of content that multimodal that these search engines are really looking to, gobble up. Same thing with like the schema markup for a website. The schema markup is kind of the code built in to the website to explain to Google, hey, this is an entity. This is a physical property. These are the amenities and features. These are the reviews. These are the how-to blogs. And so the more schema markup you can have built into your website to talk about your brand entity, the better chance you're going to have to be picked up by those AI search engines.
So basically, marketing 101, back to the listings, making sure our directories are clean. Some of the stuff that we've been talking about for 20 years, as this has been coming through, and it still means something today, even with AI, which makes me feel a little bit better. Doesn't that make you feel better, Anne? Because we know that space.
Yeah, I can finally, maybe I'm gonna print out the old local search listing ecosystem graph again and hang it
Mhm.
on my wall, because that used to be our Bible. Every year it would come out and we would follow the lines of of what directory fed to what directory so that we could make sure all of our listings were as up to date as possible. So no, I think it makes me feel good. And I think, we wanted to talk about AI search readiness. And I think Chris's question was a good one of where do marketers start? And I think you've given people a really clear place to start is start with your local listings. And make sure that they're up to date, that they're consistent, that there aren't duplicates. I know exactly what you're talking about with Yelp, that especially if you're a management company and you're gaining management of a property, a lot of times those listings aren't transferred from one management company to another. And so you're marking them as closed. I'm guessing that was the example that you're talking about. One of them's
Exactly.
marked as closed, you open up a new one. And so do you think we'll see Yelp, for example, maybe change how they do business, make it a little bit easier for businesses to manage situations like that? That's kind of what I wonder about. And I have the other thing that I was thinking about recently is there's this pressure now to get reviews on multiple ILSs, but the logistics of that from a property management standpoint are very difficult. And I don't know if ILSs always see that it's like a user, like for us to ask our residents to go and review in 4 or 5 different places. So I wonder if this like renaissance of, basic SEO best practices will also maybe help some of the platforms that we rely on shift um what they expect from us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think in general, when it comes to like Yelp, I know when it comes like you're the second person to ask me that same question. If Yelp would actually do a better job in making things easier, I have a feeling the answer to that question is going to be no. So I feel like the apartment marketers that are able to jump through those hurdles and maybe even have to have that Yelp rep, maybe they got to have that premium listing. That's the thing. We're going to have to run through these hurdles and kind of get through them. I mean, we're still having issues with like there's still like Google Business Profile. I'm still hearing, people will get, sometimes flagged or something happens and their listing gets, unverified, right? And then once they lose that, they lose all organic visibility. And that's like a big major pusher for organic traffic. So the more that they understand where their listings are, what kind of sentiment each listing is carrying with them, like understanding the sentiment of the listing of those reviews. And we have to be careful with even, like the gatekeeping, even pushing for reviews. There's so much going on with like the FTC and how you're able to legally push that, and we want it to happen naturally. And of course, that's the ideal scenario, but we know, we got to be very careful with pushing reviews and trying to, do that almost like we got to ask, try to get them naturally. And what I would love to see with reviews is not just reviews on the listing sites, but we need more video testimonials from residents, talking about the brand that they could upload. And that's a big thing. Like YouTube just released a new feature within their own thing. They're calling it it's like Ask YouTube. And it's more of a conversational experience, but to where YouTube is converting your videos into more structured data. So if you want to plan a vacation, you just got to go to YouTube, Ask YouTube. And of course, right now it's for the premium members only. So you could go to youtube.com/new. And if you're a premium member of YouTube, you could actually try it out. But it's like your own ChatGPT visual experience that's coming to YouTube. So video in itself, YouTube as a platform, I think is probably the most underutilized opportunity for apartment marketers to get creative short form video, creating videos around every unique amenity, every unique floor plan feature, and be able to create these videos to add more context to help train the AI better. And YouTube is probably the best one because it's most likely to get picked up by Google and Bing. And then if you can get picked up by Google and Bing, for the most part, it should be able to get curated to a lot of the other ones as well.
I think that's interesting. So when you think about a YouTube strategy, is it okay if a company has one YouTube channel for all of their properties so that it's kind of easier to manage?
Yes, I love that question. So if you're going to be running demand gen or YouTube ads, like for individual communities, then you'd probably want to have individual brand accounts. I actually just helped a management company. So you can do a YouTube brand account and you can manage multiple brands from one email.
Okay.
So you could have your main property management one and have it under a brand account. Then you can just manage all of them from one backend and have individual profiles. So ideally, I know it's more of a pain to manage individual community YouTubes, but if you are going to run paid ads digitally, then that would probably be the way to go. If you're just focusing primarily on organic and building authority, maybe for the property management company, then it would be fine just to do the one if that's what you want to do. But if you want to get some paid play later on, then I would probably recommend individual, because when you do that, the brand logo and all that's going to showcase at that level.
It's so funny you mentioned that too. Sorry to jump in.
Yeah.
Because this has been a hot discussion in my department where I'm trying to replace photos with video as much as I can. And sometimes the thought is, well, the video is showing what the photo showed. Yeah, but it's video and it's moving. I don't know. And we haven't done it all yet, but we're getting the video and we're getting all this video so we can create the content later, because I just have a feeling in my gut that video is going to be the next thing. And so I just want to have as much as possible. So when it is, we're ready to go. We can cut it however we need to cut it. But I mean, I even tried video FAQs
Yes.
to do something different. And I love it. On one of my communities, like we have a real person, our managers on there answering questions. It's pretty awesome. Not every question, but 5 of the 10 or whatever 15 that we have video also. So it's just kind of a fun. I've been having a lot of fun with the video because I don't know. I want to take chances and see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and if you make the one video, you have a chance to put it on YouTube. You could spread it to
Yeah.
TikTok, Instagram Reels. I mean, even Pinterest can do videos. So every piece of video content you can spread out to other sites that can, help build up better sentiment for your brand. And so it would be a win.
Yeah, Martin, that's something you're really big on, is that kind of like what you call multimodal, right? Is how do you take one piece of content and allow it to live on in multiple places, multiple platforms.
And then the other thing, and I know we played around with, is review mining, like being able
Yeah.
to download a CSV of all like 100 or however many reviews from like the last 90 of the last year, and being able to use Claude or, some other AI to find content gaps or opportunities between like your
Mhm.
competitors and what you're running. There's so many blog opportunities you can create and be more predictive, and maybe even predict, something before people even search it from your reputation.
And now, a message from our sponsor, Flamingo. Every multifamily marketer wants to know what the next big thing will be. At the apartment department, we think that resident retention is the next big thing, which is why we're excited to have Flamingo as our podcast sponsor. Flamingo, founded by Jude Chai, is an all-in-one resident retention platform used by some of the top-performing communities in the country. And here's a fun little secret. If you see a community with 300 plus online reviews and 65% plus retention, there's a good chance they're using Flamingo. From automated renewal management and resident events to amenity bookings and even an AI concierge, Flamingo brings everything together in one sleek app that residents actually use. Learn more at getflamingo.com. Yeah, I mean, that was a strategy. Like you said, we've worked on that. And one of my favorite examples from that was so simple. There was a property and there were complaints about, I think I talked about this on a podcast we just recorded. So I apologize if everyone's hearing the same story twice, but where there were reviews that like the hallways maybe were a little dirty at a particular community. And so we were able to write a blog about what to expect when you live at this community. And one of the things we put was the hallways are cleaned on a weekly basis. But if you ever see anything wrong, then contact the management. And so we addressed something that was a negative in the reviews. We found out the information from the property manager, how often the hallways are cleaned, and then we made that information available so that the correct information was there to counter maybe something that might be a hesitation, that might surface as a hesitation. So I think you're absolutely right. There's so much opportunity for us to use the information that's already out there.
And probably another piece to that too is like Google Business Profile. They released a newer feature. I don't know if it's called Google Live or Ask Maps or something like that.
Yeah.
But you can go to a Google listing, you can have a conversation with it to kind of dig in. Okay, well, I need to know more about this property, this or that. And that's why having the FAQs built into your website now is going to be like, you have to have it in there because they're kind of deprecating the Google the Google Q&A section is kind of being deprecated. Maybe they'll bring it back, maybe not. But at least if you have it at the source of your website and within the reviews to some degree, when people are talking about you, that's where you're going to have a better opportunity because Google's looking at the website, they're looking at the reviews, all the information on the profile. So the more context about, and maybe even the knowledge graph. So Google has their knowledge graph and all the information they have about your brand, that entity brand information. It's almost like the soul of what your brand essence is on the internet. I think they're kind of collecting that to some degree as well and looking at third parties too.
I think
I
you're
was
right.
sad when that Q&A kind of went away because I spent time adding all of our FAQs to it on Google. Or sad to hear that they're not like using it, And that's one of the things, you take chances and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Martin, you said one thing and we're on the reviews. Can you tell the listeners out there what they need to be thinking about with these reviews and what's coming down from the government and everything else? Since you mentioned it, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I think, honestly, we just have to be, of course we want to be proactive, try to get reviews. I feel like there's different ways you can, whether it's through the events, After you just have like a quality lease, maybe you're having like a renewal, little, maybe we can call them micro moments or just things that really stand out to where it's like, okay, maybe we have an opportunity there to ask. I mean, I even hear like we have to be careful too with having like the review QR codes like at the property on site too. I like there's like all these different things coming down where it's like, okay, well, maybe they shouldn't be leaving the review right at the spot. Maybe they should be somewhere else. So there's a lot of things that we have to keep in mind. But at the end of the day, if we can get different reviews on different platforms, of course, Google is probably the main platform, or if you have to push reviews, that's where the majority of them I would probably recommend to go. But of course, the different signals for other directory listings are going to be so important that we cannot ignore them. So we have to find a way to be strategic to spread the reviews around, whether it's and that can get tricky, right? Because I know like whether it's surveys or different things like that, it can be a challenge to just try to ask, and people are sometimes shy away from asking for reviews. But again, I think there's such a big opportunity for your reputation and sentiment has never been more important than it is today. A negative reputation will almost guarantee that you will not be part of the conversation, and no longer do you have to put best apartments in to be showcased apartments with the best reviews. That is just a standard for Gemini. They're only going to be showing the best in class, about 4.3, 4.5 stars or above usually.
Mm.
So your star rating has to be extremely high on the average across all the major platforms when it's all kind of synthesized together to make that impact to really be there.
It's so I don't mean to be like a Debbie Downer, but it's so daunting. I mean, I just like I was going back to it before, like it's crazy if you think about you've got Google, you've got Bing, you've got Yelp, you've got apartments.com, you have Zillow, you have I don't know if apartment list takes ratings or not. I can't remember now. But let's just say you've got 5 or 6 different platforms to gather reviews on. You have 100 residents, and I think I'm just talking. I don't even really have a statement. It's so important, and I don't know, it can
And I
feel
think,
like
well, to kind of add, I mean, that's where it's important to kind of get a grasp on, um, because now in the world of SEO, we track rankings. So we're tracking the rankings for Google and Bing, for
Mhm.
organic, for maps, for mobile and desktop for the same keyword. Now we're also having to track prompts for the different AI search engines. And I know there's like a little debate between there. I understand, every time you prompt, you're having a conversation with the user,
Yeah.
that user based on their memory and all that kind of thing. But these monitoring tools, they do provide a purpose because we need to have a pulse on what's actually happening out there on these AI search engines and what is the sentiment for my brand. And otherwise, you're not going to know your sentiment. And by understanding your sentiment, then you can actually dig in and find those listings that are having negative or find those reviews and be able to make an impact more specifically on the AI search engine that you want to make a better impact on. I don't want to say manipulate. It's more of like, okay, just being able to take an action that could have some kind of result to help make that conversation look a little better.
Okay, do you know what? That makes it a lot more manageable. So you're kind of saying like you understand your sentiment, you see negative sentiment is coming from one particular source, then you can focus on improving the sentiment from that particular source, and then kind of you can be more strategic about it instead of it feeling just like, "Oh my gosh, I have to get reviews on 6 different platforms," which was how I went into it. So I like I like your approach better. But I think that makes a lot of sense because, I think I'm probably not the only one that feels that way, that it feels like a lot. Even though we're talking about the fundamentals that we've always talked about, it still
It's
feels new and different and overwhelming.
I was thinking the same word. Overwhelming is definitely the word, especially when, you know, I bet you, they probably just got a handle on like SEO and just like a normal search engine, let alone, okay, how does AI work? How does a large language model work? Because it's different. Google, the 10 blue links, when they invented PageRank to index all the websites of the world, that was
Mhm.
the biggest innovation we've ever seen to be able to find information at our fingertips. But now the LLMs, the large language models, think of it like a prediction machine or like a magic 8 ball. You shake a magic 8 ball, you have your answer, it gives you its prediction. It's thinking about, it's giving you the prediction based on all the information that's on the internet, all the books ever published with or without their permission, and coming up with the answer. And so in order for them to stay grounded to reality, they still have to go to Google and Bing to scrape to find websites and information and bring it back and put it all together.
No.
When we get overwhelmed with things like this, though, Anne, I always go back and just think about basics, and you got to start somewhere. And so if you think about it, that we have 100 sites that we have to go figure this out on, that becomes hard.
Mhm.
But if you start it in one, figure out Google, for example, and then move to apartments.com if you have some listings, or move to the next one, and you take it one at a time, it becomes less daunting. It takes more time, but it
Mhm.
becomes less daunting. And those of us that are willing to take those chances and start working on it are going to fare better than those that get overwhelmed to do nothing. And I think I don't want to simplify it, because it's not simplified, but I mean, if you're just out there listening, like, oh my God, that was a lot, it is. But if you take it little piece by little piece,
Yeah.
the little pieces end up adding up. I think it's impossible to do all of it right now.
Yep.
Our industry is different. How we operate is different than a lot of other industries out there that can do SEO differently. At least that's my take. And so you just have to take it one little chunk at a time. Like, I'm gathering video. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but we're going to use it. I know it's coming. And so like, that's the whole thing, is that, like, you can't do it unless you get the content. So like,
Yeah.
even I went out and filmed the unit and did a unit walk, and like, it was okay. It wasn't as good as, my employee Adam. He's the best, but it was enough that we could go use it for something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one step at a time, and whether you use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whatever your AI tool of choice is, work hand in hand with it. If you have questions, let it be your guide to some degree, and again, just one step at a time. If you don't know how to do something or want to figure something out, I've been learning so much, being able to build and learn alongside Claude and other AI search engines. I mean, it's just opening my mind to all the possibilities on what we can do. I mean, I feel like we have superpower. We have access to like superhuman abilities now when we kind of pair our human ingenuity, our domain expertise, and our personal real life experiences, and we kind of mirror that into our own chat experience. I mean, it creates something pretty magical.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to ask a dumb question, if I could. If we ask these AIs to help us, let's just say, look at my website, where are my holes compared to my competitors? Can we trust the info that we're getting? Like, should we move on that? Or, I mean, obviously you have to use some common sense here.
Yeah. I would do.
Put
I
a
would
little
do.
asterisk there. But like,
I would.
is it like a test and see? Or, yeah, like, it's okay to use it because it is smart enough to know that, like, yeah, you're missing out on, talking about these amenities versus your comp, or this location, you're really close to it, you don't mention it at all, or something like that. I'm just kind of throwing something,
No, I
an
do
example out there.
100%. I think when if you can activate the deep research part of like Claude or ChatGPT, and you put in your website, maybe a couple of your competitor websites, it can come up with a pretty deep analysis. I was helping somebody not in the multifamily industry. It was actually a Krav Maga place, my Krav Maga place that I go to. I was helping the owner there do some stuff, and I had Claude do some deep research on that website, and it was able to find like like the owners of the company. It told me how much revenue they were potentially making like over like the year. I got some deep information that was pretty personal. I was like, wow. And then I verified it with him, be like, hey, this stuff all pretty factual. He's like, yeah, this is actually pretty accurate. So I think people will be surprised on how deep research these agents can kind of dig out there. But of course, that's why AI fluency is really important for people. It's around the 4Ds. So like kind of understanding it's I forget, it's like diligence and different ones like that, but understanding like what you're trying to accomplish, and then finding the right platform for that. For example, if I want to generate an image, ChatGPT is probably the one to go to. You can't really do that too much with Claude. If I want to do a presentation or do some coding, then Claude's like my go-to. So really depending on what you want to accomplish and do, um, understanding what platform capabilities they have is going to be really important as well.
Yeah, I found that out yesterday. I tried to uh stage a photo in Claude and it was like, "I can't do this." And I was like, "What?" You can't? But it made me the most beautiful 7-page report that I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
Like the smartest, most beautiful thing that would have taken me like 5 weeks to put together on my own. So,
Yeah, Claude is a magician when it comes to presentations and documents, and yeah, it's just knocks it out of the park.
It was unbelievable. So, what else should we be thinking about? Definitely local listings, sentiment, video, are there places that people can go to learn this information? I've been saying to people, like, go back and read Google's SEO documentation to kind of, understand how they rank. Do you have any go-to places that you send people to kind of almost reset their foundational knowledge?
Yeah, if you want to kind of keep tabs on SEO and AI search, I would suggest searchengineland.com is kind of like my go-to resource. I'm always kind of in there plugging away. Also, go back and read the Google helpful content update and go deep on that. That was something that was released, some years ago. But again, the old is new again. Like, so a lot of these old strategies, these core foundational things around SEO are going to matter so much. Creating actual helpful content that helps users. So it's things like that that's going to really help move the needle. We need to be thinking about what other layers can we add to the apartment website. I mean, I think forever we're so used to just those homepage, the floor plans, the virtual tours, the contact us. But what kind of now that we have vibe coding, we can build like another page or a subdomain. We could add some pretty interactive features to our apartment websites about the local area and make really cool little directory maps on what's going on. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff we could do today that we couldn't do before. I mean, don't even get me started on like, the AI generation, AI images and turning those into video and what some people are doing. It's just amazing, right? But of course, you want to keep that integrity. You also have to keep the authenticity of the apartment. You don't want to catfish anybody either. So there's so many cool things kind of happening right now. And if, you have to be experimenting, you have to just be trying different things and just, yeah, fail fast and just keep pushing.
How should people track their efforts? Like, what are the 2 or so they're doing all the things, creating the videos, creating the content, on their website. How do they track that this is what they're doing is successful?
So first and foremost, obviously you have Google Analytics, and you could set up a custom channel and kind of bucket it under AI search. And then within AI search, you could bucket all the LLMs into that bucket, right? So of course, ChatGPT is kind of slowly becoming a top 10 source of traffic. But if you were to bucket ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, Grok, and DuckDuckGo all into one AI search, I think you're going to find it together. They will start growing faster and you'll be able to see the user experience as a whole, and that will give you a pulse there. Plus, you could use, we have our own internal AI monitoring tools that we have within our own stack. So finding a partner, provider that can help you actually keep track of your prompts, the sentiment of those prompts, and being able to make an impact and help you create that multimodal, content strategy.
Okay. Anything in Search Console that people should be watching?
Oh, Google Search Console is slowly kind of doing some little features around AI, but the one that's doing it the best is Microsoft Clarity. And that's like Bing Webmaster Tools, Microsoft Clarity. It's all free. You just add like a little code on the website and you can get search experience optimization information, like the scroll depth, like how far people scroll on the page, the AI citations and mentions as well there from different AI search engines. So people are charging a lot of money for the AI monitoring, and so Microsoft Clarity is really like a good, um, you know, kind of leveling the playing field a little bit to where there's no excuse anymore.
Is that only showing data for visits from Bing, or is it showing
No, all
all the
yeah,
activity on your
if able
website?
to bring
Okay.
in the main activities, yeah, from other platforms as well.
That's amazing.
Man, this flew by, Martin. I can't believe how fast this pod went. You gave us some really, really amazing information that I think we can all take back and do something with. What is the one thing you really want to leave us with, and our listeners? Anything to recap as well?
Yeah, I just probably want to just reiterate, like we're in such an amazing time in humanity. I mean, it's scary, it's exciting. I mean, AI is kind of off the handle right now. There's no like real regulation besides like they did kind of put some regulation, but even then, if you expect the government to regulate anything, I mean, good luck. Especially with this AI stuff, man, it's just going to go off the walls. I feel like by the end of this decade, we're going to live in a completely different world of like, the humanoids, the robots are going to start hitting the scene. I mean, we're going to be managing, autonomous agents. I see such a cool future for those who are willing to, take the time to learn more how to, have the human augmentation, the human in the loop, and have us kind of merge together to kind of create something more valuable and more amazing. I think there's just such an opportunity, an economic opportunity, for the people that really hit this head on.
This was a really good one.
I know. I'm like, there's so much.
Martin, I feel like, I mean, we always say this, but like this really does and need to be a part 2, because I think we kind of just
Scrape the surface.
scraped the surface. Totally.
Yeah.
Martin, this was really good. And you gave us actionable stuff that we can take home today and go do.
I know. You know what else is funny? You mentioned Pinterest, which like I think I think that's the other thing is like you mentioned Pinterest. I know Reddit has like been floating in conversation. Like Martin, that's how you and I started talking was
Yep.
some whole
Yeah.
I don't even know, like 45 minutes on Reddit. But I mean I think that's Yelp, kind of hanging on there. And so I think that's just interesting to me too, is like, I don't know, there's just so many opportunities. Yeah, there definitely needs to be a part 2, like get the foundation right, measure it, see if you're seeing movement, and then start thinking about, I almost think picking just one property and really going all in on it.
It's a good idea. My whole thing is, and I don't want to belabor the point here and keep going, but like, it feels like Yelp died years ago, and
So
it
this
feels
is
like
what I'm saying.
Bing is dead. I know, I'm agreeing with you. And I
Yeah.
just don't, I have a really hard time like spending our hours in our industry to go do this on sites that are dead and they're only there to generate SEO. I know it's important, but just principle wise, it's hard for me to go do it. But man, if it's going to make a difference, and that's going to make the difference between me and the comp down the street, because they're not going to do it
Yeah.
because of my same
Yeah,
behavior, then maybe
and
it's worth it.
and if 90% of the multifamily industry are ignoring Yelp and they think it's dead, I mean, that's kind of the opportunity, right? And so,
Yeah. Yeah, Chris, that's your sweet spot, being
know.
different, finding things that
be
I
sure.
yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think we could kind of go on and on about I don't like businesses that make it difficult to do business with them. And so that also bothers me, but neither here nor there. Martin, I know we already asked you, but anything else? Any other before we
So yeah, I would just say if anybody's interested in joining the multifamily club
Yes.
and want to invite, you can go to multifamily.club. That's the domain, simple as that. Just send me. It'll have a little form, name, email, and then when I get it, I'll forward you a link to the invite, and I'll also send you a reply to the email to let you know, hey, you're in.
Awesome. Yeah, everyone go join Martin. Like I said, I spent, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes with him at a round table at a conference, and all of a sudden there was an entire app built. So it's just really incredible what can be done, and probably, go to the club with one problem you're trying to solve and go from there. So Martin, we can't thank you enough. Definitely want to have a part 2. Thank you to Flamingo, our sponsor. Thank you to Carlos, our producer. Thank you to Chris, of course. And until next time, this has been the Apartment Department.